Alright guys, so this season I've done a lot of deer hunting, but when it all went right, it was on a buck I call the Big Six. Now the Big Six was in my top 3 from the beginning, and we had a very close encounter earlier in October, where he walked basically right past me but to the right. And I potentially could have gotten a shot off, but it wouldn't have been easy. So, going back to July 1st, I don't remember if I'd gotten pics of this buck before July 1st or not, but definitely I can remember on July 1st I saw this buck in velvet. And I remember thinking, that's a pretty good looking buck. And after seeing some of the others, there were 5 or 6 pretty good ones at least. And I quickly made a top 3 list. And the Big Six was my number 3. Now, it was a close call between my number 2 and 3. They were just different. My number 2 was a tall 8-pointer, and then my number 3 was the Big Six, which he was just kind of wide, and his antlers go out and jut in, and he's got really pretty symmetry. And they both were pretty symmetrical, 2 and 3, and both pretty cool. But I finally chose the 8 as 2 and Big Six as 3. Number 1 is a big 10-pointer that I'm still after. But for the Big Six, he came in July. He was coming in velvet all the way through July. I was getting pics of him. Then August comes. I'm still getting pics of him. September comes. Still getting pics of the Big Six. October comes, and Big Six goes back to daylighting early into October. And one of the times he did, I was away at a deer camp with a good buddy of mine named Toby, and he'd taken me to their deer camp, and I had a great time with them. And I do remember one of the evenings there when we were getting ready to just kind of eat and relax and get back after it. Big Six came out in daylight, last light. And so, I knew that he may be a potential target coming up soon. And then pretty early into hunting after that, getting back home, Big Six, there were some does. And 3 does came out of some brushy stuff and jumped a fence and came over and were feeding in the corn in front of me. And then they looked up the hill and started to work their way up the hill. I think there were some fruit trees or something back there, maybe some acorns as well, but also some fruit trees at that time. And they headed up that way to go feed. And it wasn't too long after, I don't remember exactly if it was 30 minutes or what, but I heard crunch, crunch, crunch. It was a dry day, and I just heard that crunch, crunch, and I was like, something's coming. And coming straight out of the thick stuff. Like, he didn't go around the back like they did. He came straight out of it. That's why I could hear every crunch of him walking up. The Big Six came, and he just stood off to the right, kind of looked at the corn, and then he looked up the hill. He kind of looked at the blind as well, scoping out the situation. And then he looked up the hill, and I think he saw the does, and he started to go like this. And instead of walking out in front of me, because I was ready to take the shot, he had my heart beating, and blood flowing, and then instead of doing that, he went straight up next to me, and I had kind of a weird angle out the right window of my blind, like I could kind of see, but it was narrow, and I didn't want to move and for him to like see me there, but he was close. Like, I could see in my peripherals he was very, very close, and I potentially could have just gone for it and like turned to the side and and gotten off a shot at him, but I decided not to take that chance, so I kind of let him walk. And when I say kind of, I mean I just don't know. Like, I could have turned and he could have bolted. Maybe I would have had a shot. But earlier in the season, I actually did get a shot at my number 2 target, the tall 8-pointer, and he did a very similar thing where he stopped to the right of the corn. He didn't go in it. He went a long way around it. I still had a pretty good shot I should have taken, but I decided to film and wait for my number 1 target. Then he came around this way, and I decided, you know what, he's really good. What am I doing? I can chase my number 1 later, and I took the shot. It was kind of a rough shot. I waited till he got broadside as he was moving and hit him, I thought, right behind the shoulder, but we went on a thorough track job and went pretty far and never ended up finding him. So, you know, he may have lived. We never found the buck. But I didn't want to repeat that. And he was kind of at a similar place, but on the right side of me instead of the left. He was a little bit closer, and I think it would have ultimately been a better shot. But because of what happened, I wanted to wait till he was out in front of me. So I kind of let him walk that day, is what I say. So that was the one encounter I'd have with this buck until the time that I would kill him. And I remember in late October I started to get really antsy. I still hadn't, you know, tagged a buck, and had that situation with the 8-pointer, the encounter with Big Six. Still hadn't and still have not run into my number 1 buck on the hoof. So late October comes, and I'm hunting hard October 30th, October 31st, and I remember October 31st, you know, I felt pretty hopeful that evening with the way the moon and the weather and just everything was, and I was rattling and calling a lot, and because it's, you know, pre-rut, and they can get a little, you know, antsy and get the adrenaline going, get the testosterone going already. So I was calling and rattling, and got dark. I left, and then right after I left, Big Six came on camera. And I remember he looked a little, from what little I could tell in the picture, he looked a little timid, so maybe he didn't like all the rattling and calling I was doing. Maybe he would have come in if I hadn't done that. I don't know. But moving forward, you know, I hunt all the way through rut. It's a lot of long hunts. I'm seeing a lot of does. I remember I was rattling in a lot of does because I'd see nothing. I'd start calling and rattling, and like clockwork, these 3 does would always come to it. And I think they were just maybe curious, wanted to see who was fighting or what was going on. But the bucks weren't working to it that way. So, it's opening day of the first split of Georgia duck season. Me and my brother go to public land. We do a duck hunt, had some ducks in our face. Our rust showed because we were a little rusty and missing shots, didn't get any ducks. And that was a pretty early venture. We had to get up really early to make it out there. And once I got home, I rested a little bit, changed, and went out to hunt the evening for deer. And it's November 18th, and you know, we're past kind of the main part of that early November rut time, and I'm just not knowing what to expect. Big Six and also another buck had been on camera pretty recently, and I'm out there, and all of a sudden, there's a younger buck that comes out and starts eating right in front of me. my trail camera goes off, okay, and I check my phone, and I can tell it's a mature buck, and I'm trying to see, and then I'm like, oh, it's the big six. Um, and I was pretty sure from the angles I was getting that it was him. The pictures were a little bit hard to tell. But but I knew he was a shooter, and I texted my wife, and I also texted a good friend of mine who's a tracker, Russell, and Russell told me, because I said, should I call, should I rattle? He said, no, just wait, he'll come to you. And I was thinking, with the season I've had, I really just am going to expect this buck to come to me. I don't know. I was antsy. I was wanting to rattle and call, but I held tight, did what he said on that one. Um, I texted my wife, the same thing. Like, I really want to call and rattle, and um, she said, just wait, he's coming to you, something along those lines. Or she said, the big one's coming. Um, and sure enough, they were both right this day. So um, the tracker, it was crazy. Russell, he even texted me or messaged me, you may be on the lookout for this buck. You may only see a part of him when he comes on the other side of the fence, which I thought, I, I was thinking, why would I only see a part of him? Like, I might see the whole deer, right? But he specifically said you may only see a part of him when you first see him, and so I'm trying to look, and Russell's telling me look out the windows, but make sure he doesn't see you and all that. So I'm trying to do all that and not let this buck in front of me see me. And sure enough, at one point I'd been looking everywhere, and I look out straight in front of me, right past the buck that's feeding, and I see just the body, not the head or anything, but just the back side of the body um, of a deer, and it looks like a large body. And sure enough, just like Russell said, I only saw part of the deer's body, which is crazy. And then basically the butt of the deer just all of a sudden disappeared down into the ditch in the creek. And sure enough, coming up the other side, it's like I held my breath almost. I don't know if I actually did, but it felt like that. And coming up the other side, I just saw antlers and saw that buck coming up immediately. Knew right then, okay, that's big six, and he looks good. Um, I knew I was going to take the shot if I had it. He walked on the other side of the fence for a long time, kind of sniffed the scrape that I had made and everything, and it took forever, but finally, I mean, this felt like forever. It felt like an hour, but it was probably a few minutes. He finally jumps that fence, and I'm like, here we go. But now he's facing me, and he is not turning broadside like I want him to. He's not moving or adjusting. He's just staying right in front, and all of a sudden, this goes on for a while, and I've got him in the scope, and all of a sudden it's like I can see him in the scope just like looking right at me, and he's chewing, and he's just looking up at me. And then at one point I feel like I almost see him start to shift like this, as if he's about to potentially bolt. And so I wanted him to get broadside really. At this point, it's rifle season, obviously November 18th in Georgia. It's well into it, but I didn't really want to take a straight on shot, even with a rifle, but when he was looking like he was going to bolt, I counted down, said a prayer, let that breath out at the end, and just shot. And he just took off, kind of in a jot, like almost a walk, but something in between a walk and like a slow jot. Just took off up a hill and went around the corner, and I'm trying to reload, and I forget, I think I either jammed for a second and then a bullet fell out, and I don't even know, it was just chaos, and I didn't get another shot, and just the way, it should have been a dead-on shot, but the way he like walked/trotted off, I honestly thought that I had somehow missed, like just whiffed the shot. So I'm freaking out. I'm super frustrated. Anyway, I'm praying. It gets dark, and I go down and look, And sure enough, there's good blood. Right at the corner where he was standing. And then a little bit to the left of that, really like chunkier, darker, like good looking blood where I'm like, okay, this deer may be down. Called Russell. He came right over with his bloodhound Roman, and they've tracked for me before. They always do a great job. They actually tracked a big buck named Tank for me last season. And we recovered him successfully. Everything was good. So we go following the trail.
Oh, I don't lose my dog. He should be down here in this bottom. Rub up! Can't believe like this.
And we come down around, and Russell's saying as he sees the blood, there's no way he can sustain this. This deer's going to be dead just out front. And sure enough, we walk down the hill, and then there he is at the bottom, piled up. So it was an incredible hunt. Season's not over, but it's very close to being over. I'm still after my number one. I haven't seen my number one since late October. So I don't know if I'll see him again this season. I don't even know if he's alive. Maybe I'll get him this season, maybe next season. Who knows what will happen. But it's been a really great journey. There's a couple other bucks now that, with it being this late in the season, I would take if I saw them as well. But that's the story of Big Six. It ended right there on November 18th, and I'd been watching this deer on camera all through the summer, with my number one. He would actually come in with my number one target a lot. I also saw him a lot with my number two target. It's like those three, the big three, they truly did come in a lot together, and so it was just pretty cool. A beautiful buck. The symmetry is great, and I'm excited to get the Euro mount back on that one. But yeah, that's the story of the Big Six. Thanks for tuning in.